Well, hello everyone. This is Al Fadi, and I'd like to welcome you back to a continuation of this new mini series concerning the name of Muhammad or Mahmed in this case. And let us dig deeper into what could this name mean, and if it is indeed a name or something else. With us here in studio to unpack all of that is Dr. J. Smith. Welcome back, Dr. J.
Absolutely.
And what's in the name?
What's in the name? That's
Right.
a rose by any other name is still a rose.
Right.
So what's in the name? Well, obviously we're looking for a name. We're looking for the name Muhammad, right? But now we go to John of Damascus and we see actually there is no Muhammad because he's right. We know in Arabic there are no vowels. So take out the three vowels. You're left with four consonants: mim, ha, mim, dal. We went to his writing, John of Damascus' writing in 730, called the Heresy of the Ishmaelite, and we see that he refers to this prophet in the 8th century, and he names him in Greek. In Greek, there are vowels. You can see it, and he writes it as Mahmed. Mahmed. So what we want to do is we want to go to that Mahmed. And to do that, we need to see what it means. So let's go back to the slide, and let's look and see what it means. Mahmed itself, in Arabic, means the praised one, or the blessed one, or the anointed one.
Right.
So you notice this. It's not a name.
It's a title.
It's a title. It also means the Messiah, which is interesting. So when you go back to Mahmed, we find that this has been around for, well, it's from the Ugaritic. The Ugaritic title referenced it way back in 1400 BC. It's been around for thousands of years. 1400 BC, the Ugarites were the ones that kind of introduced it. The Hebrews then took it from Ugaritic and they introduced it into the Old Testament. You will find the Mahmed in Hebrew 11 times in the Old Testament. So it's right there in our Hebrew Bible. We should have known this. We should have looked at it. Actually, the Muslims have been intimating it. They always go, don't they tell you that, because in chapter 7, 157, and chapter 61, verse 2 in the Quran, it says, you will find this prophet, this unlettered one who cannot read or write, whose name is Ahmed. And so they've scoured our Bible to find this word Ahmed, and they found it in Song of Solomon 5:16. Chapter 5, verse 16. And they say, see, we found Muhammad. Little do they know, they're actually pretty close to what they're doing. But the problem is, it's not the Muhammad they're looking for. It's the Mahmed in Hebrew, which, again, is the same four letters in Hebrew that we have in Arabic. Arabic comes out of Syriac, comes out of Aramaic, of which Hebrew uses the same, very similar to this, very similar letters. And that's why Mahmed in Hebrew is the same Mahmed that the MHMD that we'd see in Arabic. And of course, Song of Solomon was written in 1000 BC. Now notice how we translate it into English, the altogether lovely one.
That's right.
In Song of Solomon, referring to Solomon himself. But later on, St. Ambrose in the 4th century, the early church father in the 4th century AD, took Song of Solomon, and he says, wait a minute, if he is the altogether lovely one, this is a title for Jesus Christ.
It's almost like a metaphor or symbolism for Jesus and the church.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so from the 4th century on, other church fathers started employing Mahmed as the praised one or the anointed one. Who is the anointed one? The Messiah.
That's right.
Anointed to what? Anointed to save. So let's look at the slides and let's continue on. There are many examples of church fathers. I've just put a few up here. Origen, in the early 3rd century, as a Christian theologian, interpreted the Song of Solomon chapter 5, verse 16 passage as the unique scripture where the eschatological nuptials of Christ and his bride are present. That's why St. Ambrose then, in the 4th century, introduced the idea that the Song of Solomon 5:16 passage referred to Muhammad, who was therefore considered as a title for Jesus Christ, the Messiah. That was picked up by Gregory of Elvira in the late 4th century. So did St. John Cassian in the late 4th and 5th century, then talk about the Muhammad as the Messiah, Jesus Christ. St. Augustine introduces it in his writings in the late 4th and the early 5th century. And that continues right up into the 7th century when Apollonius, in the middle of the 7th century, then introduces. Therefore, as you look at it, as we know, that Muhammad was a common title for Jesus by the 7th century in the church in that part of the world. So we should not be surprised when we find it written in many places, as you're going to find. Muslims have been coming to us and we can find Muhammad all over the place. The problem is every time they find it, he's way up in Damascus, or he's in Ctesiphon, which becomes Baghdad. He's over in Gaza. He's way up all over the north in Syria and Jordan and also in Lebanon. But he's not down in the Hijaz, proving that this must be a title for something else. But not just the Christians. The Jews also refer to Muhammad as the Anointed One. Let's look at the slide here. In 523, this inscription was created way down in what is today Yemen. And so it's a 6th century Jewish rock inscription. It's part of a Himyaritic inscription, and it says, I'm not going to read it because I would mess it up, Rabhab bin Muhammad, translated mean, by the Lord of the Jews, by the Muhammad. So the Lord of the Jews is known as the Muhammad. Where do we see that? Take a look right there where I'm putting the triangle.
Yeah, so Rab here is Lord. Hud is probably in reference to Yahud, who are Jews.
Jews.
Yeah.
The Muhammad.
Yeah.
So it's a Sabaic script. This would be the script that would have been used if the Quran were written in the Hijaz. This would be the Sabaic script. Notice it's not the same script that you see in the Quran today. Isn't that interesting?
That's true, yeah.
The Sabaic script does not look like that. But it would, because all of those people in Yathrib, what is today Medina, and if Mecca did exist, they would have used this script. So this would be the Muhammad we're looking for. So who is this Muhammad that they're referring to? What we do know is that the Muhammad is known as the Anointed One, the Praised One. It is a title for the exilarchs. The exilarchs were those who were responsible for the seminaries, the Jewish seminaries in what is today Kufa, what used to be called Hira, which is just south of what is today Baghdad, which used to be called Ctesiphon up until the 9th century, or 8th century, sorry, when the Abbasids changed it, and that was their capital. In Hira, in what is today Kufa, is where the Jewish seminaries, and they would have these men who were in charge of the seminaries, and they would always put Muhammad before their name. Muhammad ben Huziel. Muhammad means the praised one, or the anointed one, ben Huziel. Muhammad ben Salman. And every time the exilarch died, the next exilarch that came after would then introduce that title in front of his name. Muhammad, Muhammad, Muhammad. So there are 5 exilarchs in the 7th century alone who use Muhammad in front of their names. So it's well known by Jews at that time, well known by Christians at that time. That's why when Muslims have been coming to us and say, we found Muhammad all over the place. No, you haven't. You haven't found Muhammad. Take off the 3 vowels. You're left with Muhammad. You're finding the Muhammad of the Jews and the Christians. Who is this Muhammad? This is the praised one that the Christians are waiting to return again. And this is the same Muhammad that the Jews are still waiting today for. He hasn't yet come. He is the Messiah who is yet to come for the Jews. He is the same Messiah that is going to return a second time for the Christians. Knowing that, we're then going to go and put it all together in the next slide.
And next episode, basically.
Sorry, the next episode.
We're going to summarize all of that. Why is this significant? One more time, please, for our viewers.
Because Muslims are looking for Muhammad. So have been many secular scholars looking for Muhammad. You're looking for the wrong word. Don't look for the man. Don't look for the name. Look for the title. Because in the 7th century, there was no name Muhammad. This was nothing more than a title that has been created way back in 1400 BC, introduced into Hebrew in 1000 BC, then introduced by St. Ambrose in the 4th century AD, St. Augustine and the other church fathers all attribute it to Jesus Christ. And then in 523, the 6th century, that's the first time we see the Jews using it. It could be much earlier. It's just that's the first inscription.
And the Himyarite, by the way, would have been the southern kingdom in Yemen, modern-day Yemen.
That's right.
Right.
So then we know that in the 7th century, the 600s, they then introduce it as the title for each one of their exilarchs. We know of 5 different exilarchs that had that title, anointed one, praised one, that were introduced in the 7th century by the
Wonderful.
Jews.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Until next episode, this is Al Fadi. God bless. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. And ring the bell so you will be notified when we release new content. Our mission is to reach Muslims with the gospel of Jesus Christ and help Christians engage with their Muslim neighbors. If you want to join us in this life-changing work, please support us on patreon.com/Sira International, or just click on the link below.